What's up, y'all? Shuffle, and today's video is going to be a tier list for heroes. I love doing these, and since we got Vestal, and it doesn't sound like we're getting another update after the driving one, if you haven't seen the video talking about the Red Hook Q&A and stuff like that, you should go watch that. It's on the channel. It's like one of my recent videos. Yeah, so probably not getting a patch for a bit after the driving update until 1.0. Which means I don't think the characters are getting changed anytime soon. Although they do kind of sneak in balancing here and there as time goes on, which is cool, but I still want that dedicated patch, but I get it. So we're going to talk about the heroes, where they stack up against each other. You know, it's been a couple hundred hours since my last tier list in terms of game time, so I've probably learned a bit more, hopefully, and adjusted my opinions a bit. All right, so starting off with Plague Doctor. Transition. All right. So for PD, I am going to put her in B. Yes. So a lot of people out there going PD mandatory until Vestal shows up. A lot of people going, you know, what is this? She's amazing and stuff like that. And she's good. Don't get it twisted. She is very good. The issue with her comes from two things. One, she really is held up by IS, Indiscriminate Science, and this just got nerfed slightly. The nerf really doesn't impact it that much, but it shows that Red Hook's aware of it. And the more this gets nerfed, because it needs more, the more this gets nerfed, the lower she's going to drop in terms of healing effectiveness. The other thing, too, is that she has some buttons that really need like paths to help out, or they're just not super effective on their own. Although there is one thing that really helps her, and that's the recent change that makes double daze become a stun. That actually makes Disorienting Blast a lot better. So I mean, you could still argue A for sure, but the things that make her good are the healing output, the IS token cleanse, and she has consistent back rank damage with Plague Grenade. The reason she's not, and she has Corpse Clear, that's also good, but the reason she's not like overpowered or something like that is because outside of Incision, she doesn't have really good on-hit damage, and also her effectiveness in rank 2 is very limited. Like if she's in rank 2, all she gets is, oops, let's see. She gets Cause of Death too. Like this is an okay loadout. I mean, you still get IS, but you know, she's not incredibly effective the farther up she goes. So she's stuck in the backline, which is fine because backline heroes are kind of more important right now. So the thing I've always said about Plague Doctor is there isn't competition for her spot. Vestal's the first evidence that she's going to have competition finally. And the more competition PD gets, I think the more obvious her weaknesses will be apparent. But defensively, not a strong unit, you know, can't generate block or dodge for herself. She needs teammates to do that, and she has to, you know, weaken enemies or blind them to protect herself. Whereas a lot of the other characters, almost every other character in the game has some way to defend themselves, and she doesn't. She's a very reactive character. This is kind of what Vestal's issue was in the first game, where Vestal was a very reactive healer, and now PD's a very reactive character. And so the other thing too that kind of hinders her is that all of her good damage comes from damage over time, and damage over time is far weaker than, I shouldn't say far weaker, but it is weaker and less desirable than on-hit damage. Like what makes Surgeon so good as a path isn't the fact that, you know, you get the HP and the healing skills, all that's pretty cool. It's the fact that Incision hits harder when you hit them with it. It's not even the bleed damage and stuff. So this turns Incision into like mini chop, and that's pretty good. But her paths are all good. But other than that, I guess that's it. So the more competition she gets for her role, the less effective she's going to see. I think that's the best way I can explain it. And damage over time isn't that great. And IS is really good, and it needs to be nerfed again. So Battlefield Medicine's good too. Like as a support unit, she's fine enough, but you know, the game has a big damage requirement, and she does do more damage than Vestal. I'll give her that, but we'll talk about Vestal later. Next up is Grave Robber. Probably no secret. Grave Robber, I don't say she's the worst character anymore. That's reserved for someone else, but Grave Robber is definitely a character in need of some assistance. She has a lot of good defensive tools. Unlike, you know, Plague Doctor, who can't defend herself that well besides reactionary healing. Grave Robber has stealth on 2 buttons. She has dodge from 2 buttons. She can move herself out of position to defend herself. Actually, she has dodge on, did I say 2? Yeah, right, pirouette. But yeah, so she can move herself very easily out of harm's way. She's fast, so she can kind of assess the field and see where the threat is, and then, like, you know, back up or lunge forward and stuff. That's really good for her. And the other changes that have come in have helped her the most. Like being able to remove tokens when you ignore them. So stuff like pick to the face, it ignores block and then it will take a block off as well. And for lunge, ignoring, you know, dodge, same with throw dagger and stuff. So all of that is very cool. That helps her a lot. The stacking stealth tokens helps her a lot. But it comes down to, again, the game having a damage requirement. For most fights, you know, some fights, not to spoil all the fights in the game and stuff, but some fights you can actually get away with having control, which in my opinion are the most fun fights, and she does a lot better in those. But otherwise, the game does have a steep damage requirement. And the other thing too is, even though she has access to dodge plus and healing tools and stuff like that, she can daze herself on, you know, pirouette, which is dangerous. Now it's actually very dangerous to do that. As well as, even though she has all these defensive tools, she has one of the lowest base HPs in the entire game. So if she gets crit, you know, by Exemplar, for instance, she's probably at death's door or close to it. And a lot of or I shouldn't say a lot of characters, but for her, it doesn't matter how good the defensive tools are if she can get one tap by certain enemies. That will always be a huge threat, as well as dodge plus is a good token, you know, 75% chance to dodge a hit, but it's not like DD1 where you can consistently get a team up to like 95% dodge. Only getting hit 5% of the time is drastically safer than getting hit 25% of the time. I have multiple recorded instances of using Absinthe, for instance, for getting like 3 dodge plus tokens, and I get hit 3 times and she dies. This has happened at least twice on camera. So it's not an amazing defensive tactic, but it's still good. And so sometimes, yes, of course, RNG is going to RNG you, but it makes the defensive tools not seem as strong if, you know, one bad instance of RNG can literally kill her. Whereas other tanks or defensive units don't have that threat as prevalent to them. Then finally, the other thing that just makes her, you know, underwhelming is that, what is it? Her damage is just, you know, low across the board. Like a lot of her skills don't get bonus minimum damage when upgraded. You know, like throw dagger, pick, lunge, pirouette does, thankfully, but glint too. But yeah, so I mean, we've been over this 1,000 times. The reason it is that way is because she has naturally high crit, so she's supposed to crit and, you know, maximize her damage rolls and stuff like that. But again, like this character is just too prone to RNG. So it's like if your dodge fails, you're probably death's doored against, you know, tough enemies. If your crit chance fails, then you hit for like 3, 4, 6 damage. And when that happens multiple times, and you compare it to other damage dealers who can consistently just do more without crits, it becomes more apparent that she's weak. And it's strange enough that, you know, she's kept up in terms of damage by poison darts. Like poison darts is just the best damage move, and, you know, damage over time being your best damage isn't great. But yeah. So sad to put her in C, but it is what it is. Okay. Next up is Dismas. Still A. Dismas is a good character overall. And I forgot to swap back to the game here. But yeah, so Dismas Highwayman, not even just Sharp Shot. Sharp Shot's busted, of course, but you know, Rogue is good enough in terms of damage output. Yellow Hand is a bit underwhelming as a path in terms of combat effectiveness, but fun factor, it's massively fun. Yellow Hand is definitely one of my favorite paths in the game, and the more enemies get access to tokens, like threatening tokens, like crit and dodge plus or strength and stuff like that, the better being able to steal them is going to be. But otherwise, same song and dance as before. The damage output is consistent. It's not like super high outside of Sharp Shot, but it's consistently good across the board with him. So just being able to use Take Aim and get 2 crit tokens really gives him good burst potential. You know, when enemies aren't ordained, you can usually one-shot most of them that aren't, you know, blocking, for instance, or I guess some of the higher health enemies. And the feeder, I want to call it the fetter, but I've been hearing Red Hook call it the feeder, so I don't freaking know. Yeah, so that's where it's at for him in terms of that. And he's got a lot of good utility too, from being able to steal tokens, apply vuln, defend himself. He's got access to dodge in a couple spots. He can't self-heal, but you know, he can still defend himself a bit. He can block, which is cool. He's got a bunch of reach. He has a stun. Like, there's really nothing bad about this character. It's just more that his damage ceiling is lower than some of the other people capable of damage, you know, like Hellion and Leper, surprisingly. But, you know, besides those things, he's consistently good damage. He will carry the damage load for your team. And like I said, all his paths are pretty good. So not much else to say there. He's a solid pick, goes into pretty much every team, and can do well. So I think that's pretty deserving of an A rank. Kind of burned through that one. I don't want to spend too much time on these, honestly. I always say that, but it ends up being like a 40-minute video. Man-at-Arms, no secret, this is S. Man-at-Arms is arguably the best character in the game, and that's just because his tools answer pretty much every hard encounter in the game. You know, it's like, does the boss or the enemy have a lot of movement effects? Well, congratulations, you can rampart to stay up front, or hold the line if you get thrown to 4. You can guard other people in case they're taking a bunch of damage. You can stress heal yourself and someone else, when stress heal is very hard to do, or stress healing is hard to do in this game. You get Repose to, you know, ping off their defensive tokens, as well as get rid of your blind and weakness and stuff. Let's see, you got Courageous Abandon, which breaks the game. That's why no one uses it. It's kind of this honorary agreement that all the players have come to, that this move is too powerful, so no one uses it. Bellow gets rid of Repose. Couple enemies are threatening with Repose. This gets rid of it. Stand Fast removes combo on upgrade. Pretty good for some fights like Exemplar. Strategic Withdrawal, very loaded move when upgraded. So he does a lot of good things, and all of his paths are actually good. Like, we meme on Sergeant for the minus damage, but the dot res, the removal of negative tokens, and the move immunity are all very, very good to have. Bulwark, just consistent damage, good stun. Stun is more relevant now too, because the double days equals stun. We're gonna talk about that for a long time, I feel like, for all the characters. And then Vanguard, just, you know, raw damage plus HP. And so, like I said, all the boss fights in this game he has an answer to. He can put out enough damage to help keep up with, you know, road encounters and stuff like that, and the buffs, debuffs, and stuff that he inflicts are all relevant. So there's really nothing bad about this character. Plus, he's got, I think, the second highest base HP behind Leper in the game, and or I guess Bounty Hunter too. That might be third. Can't remember where exactly they fall, but yeah, he puts out a lot of good stuff and really doesn't have a notable downside, especially because, you know, his weakness would be getting thrown to rank 4, but he can fix that with one button. And he has a lot of stuff he can do from 4, like Defender, Bolster, Retribution, Command, Bellow if he needs to. He has a lot of options. So the more you understand the enemies that you're fighting, the better he gets, and he can really fine-tune his 5 buttons to pick apart whatever the encounter is. So it's really cool, but definitely too strong. Let's see. Hellion. Let's say A. I was bouncing between A and B for her. But with Hellion, it's interesting. She's like, when people say, you know, Grave Robber is great because she's a, you know, her value increases because she's a tank and stuff like that. It just run Hellion. I don't get it. You know, Grave Robber's a bit faster, sure, but Hellion has, you know, better base stats in terms of defenses. She has the ability to weaken enemies. She can, you know, focus taunters. She can actually taunt without having to go into stealth and stuff. And she gets stronger the more beat up she gets. You know, when she gets lower HP, she does more damage. So she actually wants to get hit. And then you also have 2 really good heal moves on the bar. Although you do have to unlock them through shrines. But, you know, Adrenaline Rush, really good. Clears dot, winded. Heal on attack, you know, upgraded, clears all dots. And the attack healing scales per target you hit. So you can, like, activate Adrenaline Rush, throw Caltrops, heal 4 times, or Yop and heal 2 times. So she's really good for that. And then, you know, Revelry upgraded gives her DBR and stuff like that, which is really good to have in mountain fights. And then her damage output is pretty good. You know, Wicked Hack damage is pretty good. If you can give her some combo too, it gets better, obviously. Iron Swan applying combo is really nice. Bleed Out does consistently good damage. She only has like 2 bad buttons, I think, at this point, and that's Breakthrough and Bloodlust. Bloodlust isn't even that bad, it's just a pain in the ass to set up. And if it bleeds, you know, it's worst Harvest, but it's okay. And then you have Hellion. This button will never be bad until it gets reworked. It could be usable once a battle. And that's good enough for, like, you know, road fights and some bosses and stuff, because what makes Hellion so good is the ability to delete something turn 1 with very minimal setup or sometimes no setup. The ability to destroy something on turn 1 consistently and turn the fight into a 3v4 from turn 2 onwards is very good. And if your other damage dealers do what they're supposed to, you turn the fight into a 2v4 after turn 1, or if it's a size 2, it's a 1v4. So it's like, it gets really, really good. Or it is really good, and it doesn't matter how high the cooldown gets, as long as it can hit this hard. But Hellion, good. Just solid, you know, good. Her paths are good. Even Berserker is okay. Carcass, if you can pick up the damage on the rest of the team, it's really good. And yeah, so really good at keeping herself alive, healing, surviving, does pretty good damage in return, and very easy to play, Hellion. You just slap her in rank 1 and just let her do whatever she needs to do. Is your HP low? Press Adrenaline Rush. Is it not low? Start hitting stuff. She's good. I wouldn't say she's S just because she can't get out of rank 4 as easily as Man-at-Arms. She doesn't have as many tools to disarm certain mechanics as Man-at-Arms or even Leper, you know, and she can't generate defensive tokens. Her tanking ability comes from her ability to, you know, weaken enemies or just kill them outright and take less damage. Okay. Bonnie. I'm gonna put Bonnie back down to B. I really like Bonnie. Runaway, whatever you want to call her. And the buffs have helped her a lot, but she's still a character that gets fixed through paths, and that's an issue. When I say she gets fixed through paths, it's like damage over time characters are not as strong as on-hit damage characters. That's another thing that Hellion has going for, is like good on-hit damage or direct damage, whatever you want to call it. So you usually have to run Arsonist, and Arsonist is a great path. Don't get it twisted. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, so just the fact that she needs Arsonist, especially if you're playing Infernal, is an issue. Survivor is okay, it's not great. And then Orphan is, as I was saying before, you know, her kind of low damage output gets fixed through Orphan and Arsonist. I shouldn't even say Arsonist. Arsonist gives her consistent damage, but Orphan, like, gives her damage. And they don't even apply to, like, Controlled Burn and stuff like that, which, you know, this is actually a good button, but, you know, the rest of her damage options aren't great. Like, Dragonfly is pretty good. Backdraft is some whole other nest of stuff that you have to set up and stuff. Firestarter's okay. Her support stuff is good. You know, Smokescreen, Hearthlight, Cauterize, Run and Hide, Firestarter. These are all actually pretty good moves. Well, not Run and Hide until it gets upgraded, but yeah. And then her damage output is average outside of like, or even below average. Like Dragonfly's pretty good, Searing Strike is weak, Ransack is weak. Firefly does really good if you have paths, but it's all damage over time, and damage over time is not desirable. Compared to direct damage. Plus, if you run Orphan to fix her damage, she gets minus HP, so if she's up front, she gets beat up pretty hard. So she's almost relegated to rank 4 for like all of her paths. And I don't know. It's good that we have a rank 4 character, but she just needs a little more damage. Honestly. Just a little bit more damage. And yeah, the support skills are good. Cauterize, dealing with bleed, which is the most common damage over time, is good, but yeah. It really just comes down to the damage and the defensive capability. Like, she's almost the same as Hellion and kind of I shouldn't even say Leper, but similar to Hellion, where Hellion needs to defend herself by debuffing enemies. Runaway has to blind enemies to stay alive. Although she can't stealth, which is pretty powerful. Alright. Jester. S. Still S. And the reason Jester is S and will be S for the foreseeable future is because Encore exists. The fact that Jester can have an ability that becomes any other ability in the game will always be broken. And it really doesn't matter too much how much you lower the rest of the abilities. Although, I don't think you need to lower the other abilities. I don't know how you would balance this without just, you know, neutering it. But even if you take Encore out of the equation, the solo finale loop is really powerful. It does big damage for like little investment, and you can do it consistently. Plus, if you really want to, you can drop finale on turn 1. So if someone else goes before Jester, like Bounty Hunter, if you have Bounty Hunter on the team and he uses, what is it, Mark for Death, and just, you know, points at them, and you get the combo and the Vuln, Jester can just blow it up immediately. So it's same as Howling End, honestly. If you have a big damage nuke that you can press on turn 1, it's usually pretty good. And then the rest of his kit is just solid. He doesn't have a bad skill. Like, I would say out of the entire cast, all of his abilities are good, which is pretty hard to do, so good job for that one. But yeah, so being able to move around with the dagger skills is good, the bleed skills are both good, the movement skills for the songs like Battle Ballad and Play Out are good. He's got the best single target stress heal in the game. And then, like I said, solo Encore Finale is always a good combo. And then Echoing March can just straight up destroy some fights with what it can do, which is interesting and cool. So Jester is S, will be S until he receives some heavy nerfs. I kind of don't want him to get nerfed because it's one of those high skill cap situations almost where Jester gets better the better you are at the game. So I kind of hope they leave him that way, but who knows. Let's see. Leper. Leper's B. I like Leper. I understand he's the anime protagonist. But Leper's big issues are the damage range on Chop. Same thing as Grave Robber. The minimum doesn't pick up. So if he's not critting, or if he doesn't have, you know, like strength and weaken, or strength and vuln on the other person, then it's not as good. Although, a good change for him is that when you combo target, it destroys a blind token off yourself now. That came in the recent patch. I haven't actually done it yet. I haven't paid attention, but that's what people have been telling me. And that's actually a really good thing for him. So I don't know if Hugh takes off too then, but it helps. Like, that kind of stuff really helps him. But his paths are... I didn't even talk about Jester's paths. All of Jester's paths are good. So there you go. Virtuoso obviously being broken. Yeah, so... doesn't mean Jester's paths don't need tweaks. Yeah. With Leper's abilities, though, the damage output from him is not great, but his tanking ability is really good. Because he can tank in a couple different ways. He can tank by disrupting the enemy, you know, with stuff like Purge, or through debuffs like Intimidate, or bashing them to control their turn orders and immobilize them to keep other people out of spots that they shouldn't be in, to keep people in spots they don't want to be in, and to keep himself up front So all of it's really good. And then Reflection is solid, removes combo, blind, all that. And Solemnity's a very powerful heal. So he has a lot of really good stuff. It's just his damage output is lacking. So Leper, as a base character, can defend himself various ways. He's pretty disruptive to the enemy team sometimes. And he can stay alive with the best of them. So just good stuff. It's really good stuff all around. Just his damage is lacking. That's it. And as always, the game is damage focused. So if you're not putting out a ton of damage, doesn't really up your stock. Although you could still argue A because he does direct damage. Occultist. Sorry, Rainy. Yeah, Occultist, I would say, is the current worst character in the game. Just gonna say it. I know there's gonna be pushback, and that's fine. You can push back. I don't mind. You're allowed to have opinions and stuff, but I think Vestal existing makes it more painfully obvious how much Occultist needs help in terms of his kit. So the things that really make Occultist bad is just Weird is a bad heal. It's just a bad heal. And the reason it's a bad heal is because the thing you didn't want to do in DD1 with Weird Reconstruction is to heal when someone is low HP, because it can roll 0 and it can bleed you and you can die. That is why you didn't want to rely on this as a heal. You wanted to heal early with it. You want to heal when people are like 50%, because then him low rolling or bleeding actually doesn't get someone killed. But because of how the threshold works in this game, Occultist will have to heal people when it is the least desirable time to do so. The other thing is that since it's a percentage heal instead of a flat amount, this heal gets weaker on low HP characters, like low base HP characters, which is the majority of the cast. Like the only people with high HP, I guess, is about a third of the cast. So that's Bounty Hunter, not Highwayman, Bounty Hunter, Leper, Man-at-Arms, and to an extent, maybe Vestal. She's in the like high mid-range, you know. But the people that need to be healed, you know, immediately, since there's the threshold, it means the HP they can be healed from is low, and the amount they get healed, the amount healed from Weird is also low. You know, if your Runaway has like 36 HP, for example, and your healing threshold is less than 30, you know, a third of 36 is 12, but you can't heal at 12. You have to heal at 11. And so the fact that you can do 9 damage in bleed and heal for 0 means that the moment they hit 11, you could actually bleed Runaway down to 2. That is just way too risky to deal with. So it's like, if you're healing tanks, if your team is really beefy, like if you have Leper and Man-at-Arms, then Weird's a bit better. If you're running paths like Ritualist, and you have the upgrade, and you have like a healing trinket or restorative herb or something like that, then Weird can seem okay. Got tongue-tied there, but for most situations, it's just not a great button. I've gotten to the point, especially with Vestal, where I just don't run Weird anymore. I just take it off. The other thing too is the unchecked power mechanic, and how he gains unchecked power is so much worse than Vestal. Like, Vestal just gets it for free for existing, pretty much. You know, she puts down her consecrations. In Seraph, she gets, you know, conviction. If she gets hit in Chaplain, she gets conviction, which she can, you know, buff 2 or 3 people a turn to get 2 or 3 conviction. She can get hit 2 or 3 times in a turn to get conviction and be maxed out immediately. And then she always gets one guaranteed at the start of her turn for Wanderer and Confessor. Compare that to Occultist, who does not get unchecked power for free, except for Warlock, and it's only 1/3 of the time. Unchecked power also burns him, which gives him a risk of dying, whereas Conviction only buffs Vestal. Like, it makes all of her skills or her skills that use Conviction better, or she gets passive buffs. Like with Chaplain, she gets stun and move res. If Vestal doesn't have Conviction, she can still use things like Judgment. If Occultist doesn't have unchecked power, he cannot use Malediction. He cannot use Burning Stars. He cannot use Anamnesis. So he can't use a lot of his his skills that require it without having it. And he needs two. It's like if he has one and he doesn't get that other one through, stabbing stuff or, Warlock procs, if you're not running Chaotic Offering, he just sits there at one and then he starts burning himself. So it's just really a mess in terms of the balance for the mechanic and then what he can do. If you ignore weird and unchecked power, he's actually decent. Like the curses are okay. I wish you could just throw these out every turn because they do no damage. But yeah, if you're just doing damage or pulling stuff and disrupting it, he's not. I mean, he's still terrible, but it's the issues aren't as apparent. But yeah, it really comes down to the fact that the debuffs can get resisted, and since they have cooldowns and stuff, or they require unchecked power like this, he can just pass turns, and that's really the biggest issue. He has so much potential to pass his own turn. Like if the debuff on weakening gets resisted, you just combo, which is okay, but a lot of other things combo while doing other stuff, and it's essentially passing. If you're trying to get the Vuln off Vuln Hex and there's not dodge to worry about, even then, like if they have one dodge token and use Vulnerability Hex and they resist the the vulnerability, it was better to just hit them. Because they have one dodge and they resist the Vuln Hex. It's better to 50-50 some damage with like Sack Stab than it is to risk that. And then Malediction gets resisted, you pass your turn. Anamnesis needs a path to be like actually good. Then Burning Stars is okay, but too prone to disrupting things. Then Chaotic Offering is just a horrible ability, because if you use Chaotic Offering and you want to press Burning Stars and it throws them up into rank 1, or if you want to use Anamnesis and it throws them into rank 3 or 4, you're passing turns, you're taking damage, you're burning yourself. It can also stun you. You're passing turns. Like, he has so many chances to pass turns and do nothing. It's bad. And the damage that he gets in return is below average. Like 3 to 6 with 15 crits, okay. Like, artillery's strangely his best button. Just because it hits 2 units. And it can double stun and stuff like that, and it's backline reach, which we don't have much of. So he just has a lot of issues, and I think Vestal being released in the state that she's in really shows that those issues are even more obvious for Occultist. At least that's how I feel. So rant's over. Definitely took like 7 minutes explaining how bad this character is, and I feel bad for doing it, but it had to be said. Worst character. Bounty Hunter. Pretty easy to slap him up in S, but what we're going to do with Bounty Hunter is we're going to rate him in 2 ways. There is Region 1 and even Region 2 Bounty Hunter, where he is like super S tier, and then there's Region 3 Bounty Hunter, where the rest of your team has a lot of mastery and trinkets and stuff, and he's still S, but he's still S. I was gonna say maybe you could say A, but I don't think so. His tankiness, his inherent base stats are really good, and the fact that he doesn't have to worry about relationships is good. And yeah, what makes him not as strong in the 3rd region is that the rest of your team kind of catches up in power. So his damage is consistent, but other characters can drop a bigger hit than him. Like Highwayman can probably put out more damage consistently, and Hellion can hit harder, Leper can hit harder and stuff, but his damage is consistently good. What really does keep him relevant is that his stuns require no setup, and honestly, if you're not running either uppercut or no escape, depending on where he's at in your team, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you should have one of those on at all times, just because being able to snipe something with a stun at any point is good. Yeah, so I can't show him on screen here, so because I don't have him. But long story short, actually, let me see if I can find him in the wiki. Save me, wiki team. Look at that, dude. It's beautiful. Thank you, wiki team. Amazing. So yeah, he does pretty consistent damage with like collect bounty, and he can recycle combo, which is nice. His base crit rates are pretty low though, which is unfortunate because that again contributes to damage, but all of his skills are pretty good, honestly. So it's hard to say he's not S, even when all the other characters catch up to him. He does so much. He has so much utility. And his resistor, look at this 40 debuff res, dude. Insane. It's actually insane. Just a good unit. So you should hire him, honestly. The only reason you don't take him if you're in like region 3 is because your team has a really fine-tuned strategy that he won't help with. But that's like a collective effort that kind of pushes him out. But if you're in region 1 or 2, he's going to be stronger than someone else on the team, guaranteed. Guaranteed. So really good character still. All right. There's a reason Vestal's at the end. All right. For one, she's the last character to come out, so she's the most interesting to talk about. And 2, I'm trying to let the YouTube poll that I put up score some more votes here. So let's see how it's doing right now. We got 10 comments before, now we got 12. So the viewers are putting her straight into A, which I actually agree with. I actually agree with this. We'll talk about why. So with Vestal, we'll read the comments too in a sec here, but she's really good. I'm not going to say she's not. She is very, very good. The reason I put the other characters like Man-at-Arms, Jester, and Bounty Hunter is because they can break the game. I don't think Vestal can quite break the game. She's very close to doing it though. With Vestal, she has a couple bad buttons. Like there are some fights, Illumination's just unusable. Handle Light is just weak across the board, which I'm very sad about. But and Divine Comfort is surprisingly too slow. It's not a bad ability by any means. It's a good ability. But the fact is, it is just too slow to keep up sometimes with the damage output coming out. She has better tools. Like the issue that Vestal had in the first game was that she was too reactive as a healer, which is the issue Plague Doctor has. She's a reactive healer. Vestal is very proactive in this game, which I like. I like that a lot. That's a good thing. So regen is proactive. You know, if you throw this out early when you think damage is coming in, it helps you catch up. The reason it's not as busted as you might think is because damage over time can ramp up so fast. Like if you're fighting 2 Evangelists, you can be taking 10 bleed a turn, you know, after like two crits or something like that from each of them. And so it's a lot. Like it's a lot to keep up with. So it's good at topping you off. It's good at, you know, keeping you alive through like minor dots and stuff, but it's not going to outpace most damage over time enemy comps. And let's see, what else does she have? Ministrations, when upgraded, is proactive. You're giving someone resist to block the effects coming at them, which Plague Doctor does have Ounce. Ounce is better than people give it credit for, so that's good. But she has the ability to give everyone, also shouts to BB for helping out here. So the token glossary, you can actually access it in this part of the game through that menu there. So being able to give someone block or dodge consistently is proactive. You know, like on their turn, you're giving them a defense to act against what's coming, so they don't have to hit Death's Door as easily. And then Sanctuary. You can guard people ahead of time if you know damage is coming. So she's a very proactive character now, which is, I guess, the best way to describe it. Because when people ask me how she plays and stuff, I've been saying that she's just like an active character. She has, like, you have to think in advance in what you're doing with her, and then she can answer situations if you can foresee them, which is really fun to play. Otherwise, she has some pretty average or weak damage abilities. Like Handle Light is just not good on any path, which I'm a bit sad about. Like it just doesn't do enough, you know, for what she needs. And it's a melee skill, it's not even a ranged skill, so you can't use this with like Judgment unless you dance her back into rank 3. So it's like if she's in 2, you Handle Light and then push past her or pull her back with like Play Out or something, then you get, you know, like a charged up Judgment, which can be good. But otherwise, yeah, Handle Light's not that good. Illumination is only good in certain fights. Judgment might be broken. You know, it has a lot of damage output and it hits all ranks. But otherwise, her healing output is pretty good. But her ability to predict things and be proactive is much better. And then there's also Mantra, is just good on pretty much all paths. This is on Seraph right now. So I can erase her there. But yeah, so really, really fun stuff. Mace Bash isn't that great of an attack. But where she really starts to creep into I'm breaking the game territory are the consecrations. At first I thought it was just light that was really good, but it's actually both of them. So the consecrations are, as I showed you, a little bit ago, the Fortitude one gives you block or dodge, and then upgraded it's block or dodge plus, which is insane. And then Consecration of Light, this move, is so good. It doesn't matter what path you're running, doesn't matter what team you're running. She doesn't have great damage herself, and your judgment turns can be pretty awkward, where it's like, you'll have 2 tokens, but all your other stuff's on cooldown, so you want to get the burn, but you can't. You have to just throw it then. Or if the enemy has dodge or blind or something like that, you throw your big hit and it just whiffs. And you were kind of forced to do that because you didn't, cycle the turns correctly. But otherwise, that aside with damage and stuff, Consecration of Light is so busted as an ability. It's good on any path, it's good on any team. When upgraded, it's an almost consistent form of giving someone crit, which I didn't realize how powerful that would be until we had it. So like the ability to give someone else, or potentially multiple people on your team if they dance, and stuff like that, crits, at 25% a turn is really freaking strong. Like, if this goes off, just the common scenario would be, you get strength, and then you buff or you debuff the enemy, and then the turn after you luck into a crit, and then you just blow something up. It's so good. It's so good. And then as far as her base stats go, I don't think the wiki's caught up with her yet. I mean, I can take a look actually. Maybe it did. Maybe it did. Good job, wiki team. Wonder if I should help contribute to the this part. Yeah, maybe I will. I haven't written on the wiki in a while, so maybe I'll help out. But so with her stats, her base stats, I thought they were higher than this for some stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, but 41 HP is a lot, and she's a character that gets better if you give her speed, because she wants to set up the rest of the team. So if you have her go first, like speed trinket, and then put down consecrations, it's really good. So overall, damage output is pretty good when she needs to contribute, but her ability to control, like the defenses and the damage output and the healing of your team is second to none at this point. She's really, really good at that. And her heals are good enough. Mantra, like on any path, is really good. Like, I'm saying all this and it's like, is she S? Really though? She might be, dude. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna leave her an A. And the reason is, as good as damage is from Judgment, that's like her only nuke. And it can only like pop off really hard every couple turns. And it helps if you have setup. Other than that, she has like no damage to speak of. Like Mace Bash isn't good enough to consider. Hand of Light's not good enough to consider. So the other reason too, like Mace Bash, is everyone else wants to be up front. Like a lot of characters do well up front, and she, kind of crowds them at that point. So yeah, I think she's A. Just the damage output isn't there for a game that is damage oriented. Unless you consider her damage output as something like Consecration of Light, then maybe. It's hard. I mean, she's in between. I don't think she breaks the game, but she's very close to doing it. So I guess it remains to be seen. I'm sure people think she's S, but I don't know. I kind of think she's A. So that's it for the video. Of course, we hit the 40-minute mark, which I didn't want to do, but got more characters. Had to talk about how much I hate Occultist. And yeah. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments. I don't think we'll do another one of these until release, because we won't have another hero until then. I don't think any changes are coming until 1.0. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And make sure to check out the poll in the comments and stuff like that, because there's some interesting takes. And I'll see y'all next time.